It's Paul Marsh, and I'm delighted to say that I've been joined by the director of Standing Up, aka Ezra, Tony Goldwyn. Tony, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to meet you.
You must be very, very excited about the world finally being able to see Standing Up, which is going to be streaming on Prime Video from the 18th of December.
Yes, I am. It's we released in movie theaters in the States in at the end of May and get a great response. And so I'm really excited to share it with everyone in the UK.
Now, before we get to all the serious stuff, there's something I want to talk about. I love the Big Lebowski bit. How did that find its
Oh,
way into the film?
well, that was this film is sort of inspired by our screenwriter Tony Spiridakis, his relationship with his son Dimitri, who's on the autism spectrum and is a very brilliant, amazing kid. And the sense of Dimitri has an incredible sense of humor, and that was Big Lebowski was an obsession of his. And they used, in the movie, Max, the main character, who's a stand-up comic, he and his takes his son Ezra. They do a dress up to go to a Big Lebowski screening, and Ezra dresses up as the dude. And anyway, it's a funny bit, and that was something that just came from Tony's life, I think.
I love that. I love that throughout all of the obviously it's a very serious film with very light undertones, but I love that that was the start, and I love that he sits at the bar and orders a White Russian and says, "No, no, actually, I'll have a pineapple juice."
Right. Yes. By the way, that was an ad lib of William Fitzgerald, the brilliant boy who plays Ezra, William is autistic himself, and he's just hilarious. So that just came out.
That
So
was
it's
brilliant.
really funny.
You've touched on this already, but let's go into it a little bit deeper about how you found the project or the project finding you, as it were.
Well, Tony Spiridakis, who I just mentioned, is my oldest friend. We've been best friends for over 40 years. We started out as young actors together and had been, best men at each other's weddings. He introduced me to my wife. We've been godfathers to each other's kids. And over the years have just shared each other's work. We've worked together a lot. And Tony has a son who I mentioned, Dimitri, who has what used to be referred to as Asperger's, which is no longer, the diagnosis, but he's autistic. And they went through a real odyssey together when Dimitri was, just before going through puberty. And Tony wanted to write a movie about it. So for about 10 years, he worked on this script, and I would read drafts of it over the years as a friend, no intention to direct it. And I hadn't read one for a while. And a couple of years ago, Tony called me and he said, I'd love you to read this new draft. I've been working on the script. And I read it and I was just blown away by what he had done. And I said, I told him, I think I need to direct this and we need to make this movie together. And I thought to myself, what a beautiful thing as an expression of our 40-year friendship, to be able to get my friend's story made and put it on the screen and do it in a way that I know will be true to his heart and what he was setting out to do. I felt I could do that. And yeah, we just had a blast doing it. It was just a great, great, very familial experience.
Well, the one thing that really, really stands out is the great cast. I mean, it literally is a who's who of amazing actors. I always think when any small project like this, when it starts with the script and then you think, okay, let's do this, let's make this, and then you write a wish list. You couldn't, in your wildest of dreams, thought that this was the cast list that you were going to end up with.
No, honestly, and I'm not exaggerating with this, our wish list was this cast.
Oh wow.
Literally every single person was our first choice. So, it took us a while to decide who we wanted as Max. That was the linchpin, Bobby Cannavale's character. And Bobby had been someone whose work I'd always loved. Bobby and I were friendly, and I'd wanted to work with him. But Max is a very, very tricky character to cast. Number one, playing a stand-up comedian has often been done very poorly on film. Actors trying to be stand-up comics, and Bobby just is naturally funny. And I felt that he could, that was a requirement that you have to believe that this guy's a stand-up comic. And Max is someone who behaves very badly and very objectionably, and he does a lot of. He's hard to take a lot in this movie in terms, the original title of this movie was Inappropriate Behavior, and that's Max. And and yet you had to have an actor that the audience would sort of fall in love with in spite of his bad behavior. And Bobby has this quality. He's very volatile. he's kind of dangerous always on screen, and yet he's got this giant heart. And in fact, Bobby is the father of three sons, and he's an adoring father. So he has that immediate connection with kids. So he had these qualities that I thought would be so right for Max. So we decided that Bobby would be the guy to go to, and we called him up, and Bobby loved the script, and yeah, and then it was Robert De Niro was our first choice for Stan, the father, and that was fantasy, I thought, but we
Yeah.
wanted to start there, and I'm very close with Bob's agent, who's worked with me on a bunch of films, and we are at the same agency, Bob and I, but his agent, Josh Lieberman. I just called him up and I said, I'm working on this project, and Josh has helped me put together a couple of films. And I said, I there's this character, and I think it might appeal to Bob, and Bob would be our dream. And I described it to him, and he said, well, Bob has an autistic son. I said, I know. He said, I think this story might really appeal to him. Let me see. And in 3 days, I got a call back saying Bob read the script. He really likes it. He wants to talk to you. And so that was a shock to me. But and Bob had some notes, and we did his notes, and he signed on. And then, but Rose Byrne was always top of my list, and she happens to be Bobby Cannavale's life partner, and I'd worked with Rose before, so knew her, and Bobby, that was easy, and Vera Farmiga was our first thought for Grace, and Rainn Wilson was the first person we went to, and Whoopi Goldberg I've been friends with for over 35 years since we did Ghosts together. And I wrote Whoopi, and she said, I don't even need to read the script. Yes, I'm in. And so it was like that. Everyone just said yes. It was beautiful.
Oh, it's literally a dream come true, isn't it? In what world does that actually happen that every single person, even Tarantino in Pulp Fiction, didn't get all yeses?
Yeah, it didn't. It's never happened to me before. So yeah, it was very exciting. And people, the heart of this movie really touched all these actors, and some of them. Vera has a child who's autistic, and Bob De Niro does, and our producer William Horberg does. And so there were a lot of people who had a very personal connection to this story.
I think the chemistry between Bobby and Robert De Niro is so great. I mean, honestly, those two could be in they could be in The Irishman or The Goodfellas or anything else like that. So
Yeah.
to find them bringing that performance to this film, I thought was magical.
Yeah, well, interesting. They were in the Irish. Bobby plays a part in the Irishman, and has a couple of scenes with De Niro. So they had worked together before. And Bob really is an admirer of Bobby's, where he really wanted to work with him. So they just had this great chemistry, and Bob De Niro gives such a beautiful performance as Stan. In this film, it's really remarkable what he does. And their relationship in a funny way. It's about the relationship between Max and Ezra, the boy, but it's equally about
Mm.
these three generations of men, the grandfather, the father, and the son, and how they communicate, really, which is something that all fathers and sons, know about and struggle with. So yeah, they just have a beautiful chemistry. I was really their work is great in the film, both of them.
It's nice to see the arc for all three characters as it goes through, isn't it? It's really, really nice to see.
Yeah, and it was something, De Niro really helped us dig out, because we realized when he signed on that Stan's character needed to be very primary in that. And having an actor of Robert De Niro's weight and caliber, and gravitas, you just better write an interesting character
Yeah.
for him. Whereas Stan could have been a more, a secondary character, and he became
Yeah,
very
very
primary with De
one-dimensional,
Niro
yeah.
there. Hmm.
Let's talk about William Fitzgerald because he is absolutely astounding throughout this film. Now, I understand that you only found William just before shooting began.
That's right. Yeah, we were determined to cast an autistic actor to play Ezra. There was never we Tony and I were determined, we were not going to make the movie with a neurotypical actor. So we put out a search, like a nationwide search, and saw almost 100 kids for Ezra and couldn't find them. And we flew a couple of kids in from different parts of the country to work with Bobby, and they were wonderful, but they just weren't the kid. And I think it was 3 weeks before we started shooting. I just have learned as a director, you just have to keep at it with the casting process. You can't settle for something that doesn't feel right. And so we kept at it, and a tape arrived at our casting director's office, an audition tape, and it was William. And the casting director called me up on a Saturday, said, "This kid just came. I just saw this audition. You have to look at this." And he just blew my mind. And he came in the next day. He lives outside of New York City, and he came in and met Bobby and I. And the second I met William, I knew he was the kid. And so we brought him and spent about 4 hours or 2 or 3 hours working with Bobby. And he's a naturally gifted actor, had never acted before, but just has he's just a natural. And he was improvising right away. He and Bobby hit it off, and Bobby loved him. And then he met De Niro, and it just was unintimidated. And he's very present, William. He has the ability to be just very present and comfortable in his own skin, and that's what a good actor needs to be able to do.
One of the other things that I really liked about this film is the fact that right the way throughout it, I think it's very much like real life. Even when we're making bad decisions, we don't realize they're bad decisions. We think in our hearts we're doing the right thing. And there are so many characters right the way throughout this film that are just making bad decision after bad decision, but they're making it with the goodness of their hearts.
Yeah, it's one of the, I found a watch word, sort of a rule of thumb for me as a director, and as an actor as well, that there are no bad guys in life. Everybody is coming from a place of just trying to figure it out. And whatever their circumstances are, they're making decisions because they're trying to succeed somehow, even if they're a sociopath, which no one in this movie is a sociopath. But having played many sociopaths as an actor, I know what I'm talking about. But as a director, I always try and in the writing of a script or whatever, to make sure that we're not taking a cheap out and putting so in this movie particularly, um, yeah, Max and Stan and even Ezra, they all, Jenna, would all make decisions that are the wrong ones. You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
But they're doing it out of love and
yeah,
they're trying to fight for their kid. And at the end of the day, the what this movie is about parents who feel this pressure for their child to thrive. And they think the way their child is going to thrive is to do what is expected, what the norms are. And every parent understands that. And the character that changes the least in the story is Ezra. All of these parents and people are trying to get him to be something that maybe he's not. And once they accept him for who he is, he kind of is awesome, you know.
yeah, very much so.
Um, and I think a lot of the characters in the film, De Niro's character and Bobby's character, Bobby Cannavale's character, kind of learn to accept themselves and each other for who they are, and learn to love each other for who they are, and forgive themselves. And that's a very important part of the film. And speaking about the father-son themes in the movie.
I apologize for this. I'm going to ask you a very cliched question, but it's something I am
Hmm.
really interested in. You have worked on some amazing sets with amazing directors. Is there anything that jumps to mind that you learned from anybody in particular?
Oh gosh, so many. I've had the privilege of working with so many great directors. Uh, Honestly, most recently, well, I mean, I've learned something from everybody, but what I found most inspiring, I think the two most recent directors that I've worked with on films are two of my directing idols, Christopher Nolan and Paul Thomas Anderson, who is I'm in
Amazing.
his next movie. And with Christopher, watching Christopher work in Oppenheimer, um, he works with so much focus and efficiency and allows no distractions on the set. There are no cell phones, no devices. Everyone is on set all the time, just focused on the work. That was very inspiring to me, and I sort of tried to follow that when we did Ezra, and it was very helpful because we had an autistic actor on the set all the time, and everybody needed to be very focused. But that really influenced my creative process. It gave me permission to kind of do that. And I even do it as an actor. Like I leave my phone. I just am there, and it's very helpful. So that watching Christopher work, and then Paul Thomas Anderson works on a set with a similar kind of focus, with so much joy in his process. That was also deeply infectious. That guy just loved. It's like he's in a sandbox. But like Christopher, there's utter focus. There's no devices. Everyone's absolutely focused. There's no creature comforts. Everyone's just there to work and to be doing this thing that Paul has created. And so the same thing plus this, he has this infectious joy about his work and curiosity, which I found very inspiring.
Amazing, amazing. Just to indulge myself very briefly, you actually worked on two of my favorite series of all times, which is Justified and Dexter.
Oh yeah.
Amazing, amazing
I
series.
love, yeah, as a director, I worked on both of those. They were so great, those were two of my favorite television shows I've worked on as a director. I mean, I acted in one of the episodes I
You
directed
did.
in Dexter, but mainly I was there as a director. Yeah, great. My favorites too. Thanks.
Tony, it's been so great to talk to you. Thank you so much for talking to me. I absolutely love standing up. I thought it was just phenomenal. Really, there was I won't give anything away, but there's a hug at the end of the film that
Mm.
got a lump in my throat and brought a tear to my eye. I just thought it was truly special.
Oh, thank you, Paul. That means a lot to me. I really hope people enjoy it.
Well, enjoy Thanksgiving and I look forward to many, many more features from yourself.
Thanks so much. Okay, great talking to you.